Second part of session 36, and now we can get into polarity as we approach the higher self. Let's start. In the last part, we gave a pretty good foundation for what the higher self is, and also the complex totality, or the totality being that is also an aspect of ourselves. And it goes with all of this that we can call a higher intelligence, or the system of the higher self. And it's important just to remember that we're talking about a sort of information stream that is coming from source all the way down to us. And what we find when we try to understand different aspects of the one being is that we can create an infinite amount of I would say definitions or identities or aspects, but it's always well to keep in mind that we're talking about unity or a one being. But of course, if we want to understand how this information streams down, it's almost like giving, specific parts to a river. Every part can be subdivided infinitely. So it's well to know that while we're talking about specific portions of one thing, it is just one thing that we're talking about. So with that in mind, we may not get lost too much into the nuances of explaining what the higher self is and who we are, and if it's a different entity than us and how we communicate with it, because our human mind, which is actually buried in or hidden under a veil of separation, of seeming separation, which is an illusion, can also start creating separation between the one being that we all are. So I know that's kind of an abstract idea to play with, especially here in this density, but if you have been watching all these videos, then chances are this is not too abstract to yourself. And moreover, I strongly believe that if you are watching this and you have watched the past videos, then for sure what you're doing is just remembering. You're not learning this for the first time. Maybe in the future, this will be content that would be appealing for people who have never seen this in their incarnations, people who are going through the process of evolution through third density for the first time, but certainly people like you who are interested in these times on this information and evolution of the soul, then this is just remembering, refreshing what you already know. So alright, so with that introduction, that in mind, I also want to go back a little bit on the session, because I kind of ended, not session, but video, I kind of ended in a transition of question that I just want to refresh. So we're going to go back to what Ra was saying. I need to go back to question 3610, and we'll start from there. So in the last video, I covered this question, so I'm just going to refresh it. 3610, Don asks, well, let me be sure I understand this then. We have spoken of certain particular individuals. For instance, we were speaking of George Patton in a previous communication. Then his higher self at the time of his incarnation here as George Patton about 40 years ago, his higher self was at that time 6th density. Is this correct? This is a very short answer from Ra saying this is correct. But they also go on to say, which is what we're going to transfer into the next question, we make note at this time that each entity has several beings upon which to call for inner support. Any of these may be taken by an entity to be the mind-body-spirit complex totality. However, this is not the case. This was explained in the different aspects that we have access to, guides, ancestors, and so on. But Ra goes on to say, the mind-body-spirit complex totality is a nebulous collection of all that may occur held in understanding. The higher self itself, a projection or manifestation of mind-body-spirit complex totality, which then may communicate with the mind-body-spirit during the discarnate part of a cycle of rebirth, or during the incarnation may communicate in the proper pathways of channels through the roots of mind are open. All right, I read that pretty bad. So in essence, what they're saying is, they were explaining, how we do have assistance from guides and angels and every other entity that exists in its process of evolution, or in the case of angels and other beings that reside in specific part of subdensities, which is nothing we should be concerned about. If you have a question about that, just leave it in the comments and I'll gladly elaborate on that. But yeah, going back to this shouldn't be confused with the totality beingness. Totality beingness, they're explaining, just as a refresher, totality beingness is that one aspect of the self that is one halfway into the creator or union with the creator, and the other half projecting back all its lessons and understandings and information streaming from the total understanding of the creation before uniting with the creator. So that projects the higher self, and that higher self exists to receive that information from the totality being to the incarnate portion, which is us, or discarnate portion, which is when we die, into third density. So it's almost like a reflection of a reflection is our higher self. And in that way, we can communicate with the higher self. And this is the part that transfers into the next question. They say they can communicate during the incarnation if the proper pathways or channels through the roots of mind are open. If these pathways, which are I want to say it's a combination. This can get complicated by none. It'll get complicated because we humans like to give specific routes and channels to how to do things. But it's a combination of will, faith, and of course, a deeper understanding, an expansion of consciousness. And more importantly, which is, it comes at the same time or before, but it has to come, in the process of, is the clearing of the blockages in the lower three energy centers, which are concerned with the illusion. So we cannot be too involved in the illusion and communicate with higher self. It's a no-no, in essence. That doesn't mean we have to be completely crystallized to communicate with higher self. Information is just expanded when we are clearer in our lower energy centers. But that's what they're referring to. However, Don is going to question this specifically. And that's all the refreshers. So now we can go into the new content of this video. We have a lot to cover. So Don says these channels would then be opened by meditation, and I'm assuming that intense polarization would help in this. Is this correct? Ross says this is partially correct. Intense polarization does not necessarily develop in the mind-body-spirit complex the will or need to contact the oversoul. Each path of life experience is unique. However, given the polarization, the will is greatly enhanced and vice versa. So Don's question was about the channels that are needed to be open, and he questioned about, like, say, okay, meditation. This is the partially correct one, that meditation does open these channels. That is true. But when he says, I am assuming that intense polarization would help in this, that's where Ra says, no, polarization or intense polarization does not develop because let's just read it, because they just read. Okay, intense polarization does not necessarily develop in the mind-body-spirit complex the will or need to contact the oversoul. Yeah, so intense polarization doesn't, we don't need to polarize intensely to communicate with higher self. They just say that is interchangeable, not interchangeable, but it works both ways. Like, the more polarized you are, the more will you have, and the more will you have, the more polarization you potentially have or already have, from increasing your will. So this is actually really satisfying to know, because I can speak for myself. When I remember opening myself to this spiritual, woo-woo thing that I considered in the path and I didn't understand. The law of one actually helped me a lot to put things into context because I was very scientific. In fact, I was an atheist for the vast majority of my life, for those who don't know. So as an atheist and almost a nihilist, it was hard for me to put into context all this stuff. And it's great news because, again, in my older mind, I used to think that, to become spiritual, you had to just go through a whole lot of process and, be this super connected being. But the truth is that, it's not so difficult. All you need to do is be very mindful. And that mindfulness is really what pays off. And now that mindfulness, just as like Don said, meditation is a great way to relax. It's almost like, when you're constricted in your blood vessels, you don't have too much blood, and that's why high blood pressure increases. High blood pressure, it's high. So because you're constricted, you're stressed, and meditation relaxes you. So it's like vasodilation for your blood vessels, and then it flows easier. So meditation can be seen this way, just in this context that we're talking about. So you can see that information could just flow more. And now the will is the one, like they're saying, the will is the one that decides to communicate. I mean, it just makes sense, right? If you are intensely focusing your will into mundane matters, which is totally normal. You're doing your thing, you're going to work, you're dealing with people, whatever it is that your life requires to be immersed in the illusion, then higher self communication is restricted. You are constricted. So this is why meditation, no matter what type of lifestyle you have, no matter if you're still in the matrix, in the control system and so on, you could be working in a bank and whatnot, and you can still have a lot of mindfulness. So this is why then your will, when you're meditating or simply relaxing, contemplating, not watching Netflix, although there is a case for saying that you may just put something on and relax and kind of like, I don't know, watch whatever is there but not really observe it. You know what I mean? Just mindfully be away from the illusion. Then that will can be directed toward the higher self and talk to it. And it, I mean the intelligence that already exists in you. So I can go on talking about this for a while, but we have more to cover. And that's what I just wanted to wrap up with. The channels that are being open is with where you're putting your intention is where your energy goes to. So that intention of where you want to put, that's your will, that's where your energy is going to be spent. And the return is always like the universe. The universe is just a mirror for you. So anyhow, let's go to next question, 3612, where Don says, let me take as an example the one you said was called Himmler. We are assuming from this that his higher self was of 6th density, and it was stated that Heinrich Himmler had selected the negative path. Would his higher self then dwell in a 6th density negative type of situation? Could you expand on this concept? Roz, it's a really good question, actually. There are no negative beings which have attained the oversoul manifestation, and that bracket and star there, I believe, is because it's implied they meant negative beings. So yeah, they have attained the oversoul manifestation, which is the honor duty of the mind, body, spirit complex totality of late 6th density, as you would term it in your time measurements. These negatively oriented mind, body, spirit complexes have a difficulty which, to our knowledge, has never been overcome. For after 5th density graduation, wisdom is available but must be matched with an equal amount of love. So, quick pause here. Okay, so Himmler, Nazi Germany, of course, very negative being. They talked about him already. And this Himmler, it gives a really good insight. That's why I titled this, polarization, or, the polarity of the higher self, even though it's kind of misleading. But the point is that we can get an understanding of how negative beings progress through the illusion of separation until they reach sixth density, which is where they need to realize that to advance any further, they just need to break the illusion, in essence. There are many ways that people interpret this. I'm going to give my own particular way of interpreting it because it just makes sense to me. So if it does make sense to you, great. If not, then just reject it, as usual. So the question is, if Himmler's higher self was negative. And so there is a sort of distinction here because of the progress of how the entity, the mind-body-spirit complex advances through the densities. They get to fifth density. Like they said, when they graduate to sixth density from fifth density, which is possible, they do see that, with their wisdom, that to advance any further, they need to, like they say, they need to match it with an equal amount of love. And they're approaching infinity. Keep that in mind. So you need to have an infinite amount of love. That means that they realize, oh my God, if I need to keep loving myself as the creator, because remember that they feel they are gods. At that point, they do feel like they are ruling the universe. But at that point, when they realize that and I'll probably expand this a little bit more, but that's the foundation of the sixth density negative being, which is approaching higher self. This sixth density negative being says, I am God. I am controlling the universe. So for them to keep controlling the universe, it's one step only to say, oh, to control the whole universe, I just need to become myself. And myself is God. But, everything else is God. So this is the big aha moment of... So you can almost say that the negative being is polarizing towards the positive, even though they're losing polarity at this point, but that's beyond, the complexity of what we want to talk about here. But they polarize towards the positive at the end of the revolution. That's just their journey, their goal. So that's why, there's no separation. There's only the illusion of separation. So, yeah, I don't think I missed anything else. I maybe, let me just reread. Which have attained the oversoul. They say, of course, there are no negative beings that have attained the oversoul manifestation, which is another word for higher self. They use it interchangeably. Sometimes they may use it just like they call galaxies or universes, and they use it very varying, not very, but small varying definitions. So in any case, it is the honored unity of the mind-body-spirit complex totality of late sixth density, right? So these negative-oriented entities have difficulty. I think I covered this pretty much. It's never overcome. Yeah, that's fine. Let's go to the next part of Ra's answer. They say, this love light is very, very difficult to achieve in unity when following the negative path, illusion. And during the earlier part of sixth density, society complexes of the negative orientation will choose to release the potential and leap into the sixth density positive. Therefore, the oversoul, which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid, is towards the positive. However, the free will of the individual is paramount, and any guidance given by the higher self may be seen in either the positive or negative polarity depending upon the choice of the mind-body-spirit complex. This gives huge context for what it is that higher self communication with us and how we receive it here reflects our reality. Okay, so they just explained how difficult it is, to achieve unity in the illusion. I don't know why they say it's not impossible. Maybe because they haven't progressed to seventh density and they're very careful not to leave something that can be interpreted wrong. So, but it seems to me that it's a paradox if they could achieve unity in separation. I don't know. Maybe my human mind, it's not complex enough, or it's too complex. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And it just, I don't know, it just feels right in my heart. Let's put it that way. That they need to, unite to achieve unity. Okay. So, Society complexes just decide, to release the potential being, that the difference, the potential difference between, separateness and unity, that is sixth density, and leap into the sixth density positive, which is unity. Therefore, the oversoul, which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid, is towards the positive. The oversoul, again, higher self, is the information streaming down to the third density being, in this case, and they do it in the positive way because there is no other option. I mean, that's what they do. However, the information that is received by us is it's processed, in either the positive or the negative, because we are here in polarity. So I'll give you some examples of this as we go on, but so I don't linger too much here. That is, let's keep that in mind, how we perceive this information from the higher self, because we're talking about polarity here in this video, and that's what's important. That's what I meant. So Don says, then, using Himmler as an example, was his higher self at that time he was incarnate in the 1940s a sixth density positively oriented higher self? The answer is, this is correct. This was already implied in the last question. So Don says, was Himmler in any way in contact with his higher self at the time while he was incarnate in the 1940s? And here is some golden nuggets from Ra, where they say, we remind you that the negative path is one of separation. What is the first separation? Is a question. The self from the self. The one known as Himmler did not choose to use its ability of will and polarization to seek guidance from any source, but its conscious drives, self-chosen in the life experience and nourished by previous biases created in other life experiences. Here we have another huge insight into what a negative being is in third density. Check this out. So first they say, we remind you that the negative path is one of separation. Big word there, separation. What is the first separation? The self from the self. So we can see it in two ways. The self is separating from itself. Okay? The self, lower self, is separating itself from the higher self, in essence. And that's the question that Don is asking. Was he getting information from his higher self? Sure, the stream was coming down, but he was opting not to listen to it, or listen to it when it would benefit him, into the negative philosophy, which means manipulation, control, power over others, and so on. So that information is streaming down, but Himmler is filtering. In the case of Himmler, he is filtering that information and saying, yeah, let me use that for controlling others. Like you were given a power. Say you realize, because your higher self says, you have a great power of speech. Your throat chakra is so powerful. And Himmler says, oh, really? So I can twist my honesty and I can become dishonest. And in that way, I can manipulate others. Or his higher self might say, you're a very loving being. And he would say, oh, love is the key to seduce others. And then I will use and twist the meaning of love to control others. Because that's what they do. That's how negative beings progress in the densities, because they do have access to love and wisdom, but they twist it. And that's how they manipulate other beings in lower densities and in their own densities as well. So again, the self from the self is separated, and the other way we can see the self from the self separation is obviously, themselves as they see themselves, the ego self, from other people, from other selves. They don't care about other people, they care about themselves. So they keep going. The one known as Himmler did not choose to use its abilities of will and polarization to seek guidance from any source, but its conscious drive. So in essence, like I said, he didn't care about that information that was coming through from source for polarization, in the sense of polarization in general. So this is why polarization in the negative, it's an illusion. It's a process of feeding the illusion of separation. And they do this, and this is the key moment, when they say from any source. They didn't care from any source, but it's conscious drives, because the higher self even can communicate through other people. they can guide you to other people to, this is why all of a sudden, you're having a hard time and suddenly your friend texts you and says the right thing, or you browse Instagram and you see one of my posts and you see, something that is inspiring, hopefully, or something like that. It just goes through the day. Your higher self is guiding your attention to give you that inspiration that comes from source. So Himmler said, I don't care, for that. I only care about my conscious drives, intellect drives, the illusion, the Maya, self-chosen in the life experience, meaning right now, or in the now, at the moment, and nourished by previous biases created in other life experiences, meaning other incarnations. He develops some sort of biases towards, control, power, manipulations, and so on. And so he derived from that. So this is so cool. So much we can get out of this to understand the path of separation. And this is not only to understand, those who are negative. We have a lot of negativity inside of us, not because we as a being are something, because we're not, but that's deep philosophy. The point is that we as individuals are carrying the weight of our ancestors, and it's an honor and a duty to carry that weight. That is why we release this weight by working on ourselves. All entities tell us to always work on ourselves, forget about others in that way, work on ourselves, because as you work with yourself and you release all this, you are more open to just help others without you even intending to do it. So very important. In any case, that negativity is in us, and it's an honor to carry it. That's the shadow of the heart that I call, and it really is an honor to have it, because I can go on this for a long time, because this is just, inner work. The more you release this, it's even more freeing for you, because you become lighter, just become, so much more in harmony with everything, your whole life. So yeah, it's important to recognize that we have that negativity inside of us, and it's not something to get obsessed about. Actually, just accept it. That's it. Accept it. Once you accept it, it ceases to be part of the illusion. See, no separation. It's acceptance, even of the self, of course. All right. So next question, Don says, well, then let's say that when Himmler, for instance, reaches 6th density negative at the beginnings of 6th density negative, at this time, would it be the case that an entity would realize that his higher self is 6th density positively oriented, and for that reason make the jump from negative to positive orientation? And Ra says this is incorrect. The 6th density negative entity is extremely wise. It observes the spiritual entropy occurring due to the lack of ability to express the unity of 6th density. Thus, loving the Creator and realizing at some point that the Creator is not only self but other self as self, this entity consciously chooses an instantaneous energy reorientation so that it may continue its evolution. So I already laid the foundation for this, and you can understand it easily. So we'll just go through it. And they say 6th density negative entity, which there is, obviously, once they graduate from 5th to 6th, it's almost like saying, all right, what's the next lesson in this beautiful density of myself? And then they realize that myself is other self, in essence, because they see they use the word entropy here. Yes, spiritual entropy. It observes the spiritual entropy, meaning that it just they lose that that spiritual mass that they have been accruing by loving themselves. People would ask, like, how are they accruing this energy? How are they expanding their consciousness so much? And I remind you that it is a very difficult path to take, the negative one, because you can only love yourself. And that love is so intense that you can see yourself as the creator, which is true. It's kind of like the paradox of the negative entity, but it is true. You see yourself as the creator. So at that point, because you're so in love with the creator that you are, the you that is false, all you need to do, or all that Himmler would need to do, I'm not sure where Himmler but it's an example that Don gave. As a sixth density being negative, all they need to do is accept themselves as other selves, and that's, the way of unity in sixth density. So, loving the creator, the self, and realizing at some point that the creator is not only self, but other self as self. So it's it's kind of like a tongue twister to say that, realizing that everybody's one. This entity consciously chooses an instantaneous energy or reorientation. So that's it. Instead of looking inwards, or not looking inwards in the sense that we know it, but looking at themselves as the universe and all that exists and everything else being separated, the more they see the macroscopic, like, all right, I am God, I am everything. And then they see, like, oh, if I am everything, then I am you as well. So I have been, separating myself from you for no reason. So it's time to just merge. And so, roll 1. Next question. Don says, then the sixth density entity who has reached that point in positive orientation may choose to become what we call a wanderer and move back. I am wondering if this ever occurs with a negatively oriented sixth density entity. A really good question. Do any move back as wanderers? Ross says, once the negatively polarized entity has reached a certain point in the wisdom density, it becomes extremely unlikely that it will choose to risk the forgetting. For this polarization is not selfless, but selfish, and with wisdom realizes the jeopardy of such wandering. Occasionally, a sixth density negative entity becomes a wanderer in an effort to continue to polarize towards the negative. This is extremely unusual. This makes sense. So Don is saying, in essence, is it possible that a young sixth density negative being, because they can only be in the earlier parts of sixth density, sixth density negative only exists in the lower parts. So if we can extrapolate, say, a third density being 75,000 years ago, a human 75,000 years ago, they were all in the earlier parts of development of a human, right? So they didn't know anything about love in the sense of, self and other self and so on. So we have to go through a process that, funny enough, took us thousands of years, and it's still ongoing. So we have a special planet here anyways. So in any case, in the same way, a sixth density negative being needs to go through the process of realizing unity, but that takes time. So Don's saying, is one of those early sixth density negative beings capable of wandering here, or in third density, which is where they can come and be wanderers? And Ra says that they are extremely wise, so they know that they can risk a lot in the forgetting, because they may, in the process of doing this, they can lose a lot of polarization. So they are very wary, of doing this. So they don't risk it. But they do say that occasionally a sixth density negative may become a wanderer in an effort to continue to polarize towards the negative. This is extremely unusual. I believe, and this is just my speculation, that it would have to be in a very negative oriented environment. Like we'll discover soon by again, by abstraction, but I'll give some other examples when we get to that point. But it would have to be in a very negative, because imagine if a sixth density negative being would, risk being incarnated in a village, where people are just normal, they don't care much about life. They risk a lot, even in a village like that, or a city or whatever, it's risking a lot, because they don't want to be loving, they don't want to be caring, they don't want to be kind, they don't want to see us, scum, peasants. They don't want to see us like that. So it's extremely unusual. So we can move on to the next question. 3617. Don says, then what is the motivation for the... Oh, let me finish that question first, says Don. What is the motivation? What is the mechanism that this unusual 6th density entity would wish to gain to polarize more negatively through wondering? And I remind you as I'm reading this that I am reading the re-listen version, so I have actually the raw contact to be more specific. So it has a lot of these moments where Don kind of fumbled with the words. So in any case, we go on to Ra's answer. The question was, what is the mechanism that this unusual 6th density entity would wish to gain to polarize more negatively through wondering, which is why would they want to come here? And Ra says, the wanderer has the potential of greatly accelerating the density whence it comes in its progression, in its progress in evolution. This is just in general, any wanderer. This is due to the intensive life experiences and opportunities of the 3rd density. Thusly, the positively oriented wanderer chooses to hazard the danger of the forgetting in order to be of service to others by radiating love of others. As you can see, Ra is continuing to talk about the wanderer in general, not the negative one. If the forgetting is penetrated, the amount of catalyst in 3rd density will polarize the wanderer with much greater efficiency than shall be expected in the higher and more harmonious densities. Okay, so let's just reread this as we go through. It's curious to know or note that Ra is talking about when Don was clearly asking about the negative, so they're gonna get into that. But Ra's given like the broad perspective of why a wanderer would come in here, and we can see this for ourselves, of course, because we are in the process of penetrating this veil. And so, the wanderer has the potential of greatly accelerating the density where we came from. So, if you came from 4th, 5th, or Dix, not sure. What kind of density is that? Probably negative-oriented people come from Dix. Negative density. I love it. So, depending on the density of where you come from, you can actually accelerate your progress in polarization due to the life experience that we have here. Ra has said in other sessions that it's like 100 times more intense, the lessons that we get here, and I would say the planet Earth is probably more, but that's just me speculating. So we can increase tremendously our polarization from here. I'll give you an example. Jesus came from 4th density, and Ra said that he already graduated to 5th density because he was, his work here was phenomenal, of course. So you can see how greatly he polarized in just I don't know how long it took him. Maybe right away he would graduate to 5th density. Who knows? But he came from 4th density. He was a 4th density wanderer. So that is because it's a gamble. We choose to forget. We go through the forgetting process, and when we do that, we risk forgetting who we are and polarizing toward the negative or depolarizing. But that also it increases our capability of being service to others by radiating love of others. If the forgetting is penetrated, the amount of catalyst in 3rd density will polarize the wanderer with much greater efficiency than shall be expected in the higher and more harmonious densities. Of course, if you penetrate, which is again what we're doing now, the forgetting process. They say the forgetting process. No, they penetrate. If the forgetting or the veil, this is the veil. If we pierce the veil, then we have the possibility of polarizing greatly here and with great efficiency, which is what we're all looking for right now. This life, this is why I'm talking for myself. I decided to dedicate my life to this because first, I derive great joy by just, it's not even a goal for me. It's just, you're in the river, you're floating, and you're going through. It's just phenomenal. I'll probably record a video to why I decided to dedicate my life to this, but I won't do much honor to what really feels to be in this process, which is not even the videos that I record in this, which I share It's just, you know, a way for me to, I don't know, express, to vent out all the, I don't know, the inspiration, the lights, everything that I feel, the love, you know, my unity with everything. In any case, you know, it feels awesome. So, you know, once you penetrate, and as you go through the process of penetrating this this veil, then you can see, you know, it's the intensity of this. And yeah, you know, it's just something that you love doing. So anyhow, Ra's gonna go now to answer Don's question specifically about the negative entity, as to why they would come here. So Ra says, similarly, the negatively oriented wanderer dares to hazard the forgetting in order that it might accelerate its progress in evolution in its own density by serving itself in third density, by offering to other self the opportunity to hear the information having to do with negative polarization. So that is the negative philosophy that we are familiar with, of domination, slavery, manipulation, and control, power over others, and so on. So yeah, you know, they hazard, you know, the forgetting in order that they can, it's almost like, you know, they know they're negative and they know they want control and power, so they say, you know, if I can go through the process of forgetting who I am, and I can be even more, like I can have more experiences controlling other people blindly because they don't remember who they are. And they can't, I would say that it's even harder for them because they can't even rely on higher self. Higher self is, you know, a beautiful guide here because it's guiding us through to the light. Whereas they need to continue to work blindly in the illusion of separation. So, but if they do, then they greatly polarize. Funny enough, it's, you know, jokes on them because a negative sixth density says, all right, I polarize, I risk everything to continue in the darkness so I can find the light. The light? What I have been avoiding all this time? Ah, what a joke that would be. Cosmic joke. So, yeah, you know, they do the same thing. Going beyond what, you know, it's supposed to be here. Okay, so Don says, are there any examples of sixth density negatively polarized wanderers in our historical past? And Ra, you can hear the screeching of the tires here as he slams the brakes, or they slam the brakes, and they say, this information could be harmful. We withhold it. Please attempt to view the entities about you as part of the Creator. We can explain no further. This is Law of Confusion and them saying, no way we're gonna say that. You know, no way we can talk about historical people who have been negative here. I can think about a couple of things, even historical figures that they can say that, what was the question exactly Don asked? If there are sixth density negatively polarized. See, like they talk about Genghis Khan, Rasputin, and I forgot who was the other, Taras Bulba, that they were harvested into negative and they were fine with that. But somehow they don't want to talk about sixth density, talking beautiful today, sixth density negative beings in here. First of all, Ra could possibly say, you know, I don't know, does this mean that there are or have been negative beings here on planet Earth? Negative sixth density, of course. I don't know. Maybe they mean like, oh, you know, when they ask you something like, you know, were you with somebody at the party, and you say like, I cannot say, but you're already saying like you were, but you never said it. So are they saying that, or are they saying that, you know, I cannot say because you need to figure it out for yourself? But yeah, you know, hard to tell. We have been for a great part of our history very negative, so possibly. This is the point where I was going to say that maybe we have a, say, maybe we don't, and negatively, because I was just thinking, you know, there are planets that are negative, negatively polarized. Orion must have several planets that are completely negative, so they have this corporate ladder, you know, all the way through the societal structures. So maybe sixth density negative beings incarnate there so they can polarize because they feel safer, because they're in a negative planet, not like this one that has always been attempted to be polarized towards positive, and there's been this tug of war over time. Who knows? But in any case, I don't want to speculate here any further. I don't know. Use your discernment. It's up to you. So they say we withhold it, and I withhold it myself. I just gave a little bit more information than possibly necessary. But I love what they say. They say, please attempt to view the entities about you as part of the Creator. We can explain no further. Because that is the idea. The idea is that you see negative, positive, whatever, rocks, planets, galaxies, I don't know, dogs, whatever. Everything is the Creator. So please attempt to view the entities about you as part of the Creator. Fire, water, whatever. Everything is the Creator. That is the path of the adept. So we go on to questions that I believe were in Book 5. So, like I said, I'm using the raw context based on the re-listen version, and I have all the questions here anyways. So no Book 5 for us. Everything's included here. Alright, Don says, 3619, thank you. I was wondering if qualification for contact with Ra might include, of the type we're doing now, might include penetrating this forgetting process. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct. This is quite correct, they say. This has to do, obviously, with Don, Carla, and Jim having penetrating this forgetting and realizing that they are wanderers themselves. And yeah, in order to communicate with higher self, you need to do that. If you're doing positively, of course, if you're negative, all you're doing is, because see, one beautiful thing about negative, the view of negative beings is that they feel so separated that even the concept of a higher self to them is like, okay, if it exists, I'll subdue it to my will. Which is possible, because you can ask your higher self and say, what do you say? And then twist that, for your own illusion of separation. But in any case, the question is not that. Parentheses closed. Ra says that it is quite correct that to contact Ra, you have to be, obviously, you have penetrated this forget. So, next question. Don says, otherwise, the law of confusion would prohibit this. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct. Meaning that, of course, you just can't have a contact with higher self without confusion, because you're in the forgetting process. So forgetting, confusion goes all together. Don says the next question, 3621. I was also wondering if 3 was the minimum number necessary for this type of working. Is this correct? Ra explains, for protection of this instrument, this is necessary as the minimum grouping, and also as the most efficient number due to the exceptional harmony in this group. In other groups, the number could be larger, but we have observed in this contact that the most efficient support is given by the individual mind, body, spirits present at this time. Funny that I don't say complex there. So, Don, again, this is why it's personal material that they put in Book 5, but we can get from here that, for the contact of Ra, they needed to be at least 3, like they said, and also that they were in great harmony. So the 3 of them were in great harmony. In other groups, it could be larger. I don't know why the number 9 came to my mind when I read this, but it could be larger. But they say that because of the harmony that they had, they 3 was perfect, and they couldn't get any better. Ra also said that they don't think they would find another group like them 3 in the future, or at least in the future of third density in planet Earth this cycle. Again, so they were very glad to have found them and to be able to do that. That's why they repeatedly said that it was an honor for them to communicate this material, and I can say it's an honor for us to read it and be able to discern it. So thank you, Ra. Thank you, Don, Carla, and Jim, and everybody at NLNL Research who are still doing this. So Austin, Gary, and Jim, who are still there, thank you. So we can go on with gratefulness in our hearts. Ra says, Don, not Ra. Maybe Don is part of Ra already. I'm a little fussy on a point with respect to the higher self. Now we each, I'm assuming, have a separate or different higher self at 6th density positive level. Is this correct? Each of us in the room, that is, here, the 3 of us. Ra says, this shall be the last full question of this working. We shall attempt to aim for the intention of your query as we understand it. Please request any additional information. Firstly, it is correct that each in this dwelling place has one oversoul, as you may call it. However, due to the repeated harmonious interactions of this triad of entities, there may be seen to be a further harmonious interaction besides the 3 entities' higher selves. That is, each social memory complex has an oversoul of a type which is difficult to describe to you in words. In this group, there are 2 such social memory complex totalities blending their efforts with your higher selves at this time. So here, I'm going to call complexity for the sake of explanation, and I'm going to zoom out to see again everything in unity, because this can leave us very confused. We're talking about different aspects of the one self that we represent here, because we already know that we are one, okay? However, the way information streams out, it's almost like saying, is the river and its affluence and, you know, everything, are they all different? Yes, there are different aspects of one body of water flowing through Earth. So we have different affluents to the river, meaning, you know, a river that meets another and it becomes one. And so as it goes into the ocean, if you can see this, you know, there are other, you know, streams that may go out and they go into the earth and they come out again. So it's so many different ways, and this is oversoul, higher self, totality, beingness, and everything else that exists in, you know, the line that we call the stream of information from source all the way down here. So Don's question was, you know, if they all had 3, I believe, yes, separate, different higher self. See, the thing in Don's question to me is the word separate. You see, as you approach unity, separation from the human perspective it's not what it really is. You know, it's almost like saying, you know, does your river is, you know, the same as mine? No from here, yes from there, but as we see that it gets all united into the ocean at the end, then yes, everything is one, it's the same. So when Ra says, you know, and I love that they say, you know, please request any additional information. I don't think they did in further sessions. Maybe they did in the future, but not relating to this. We'll see. Firstly, it is correct that each in this dwelling place has an oversoul. Yes. So you have a streaming information that is very in tune with you, as you are a manifestation of that self here. So you do have an oversoul. That is true. It is correct. However, due to the repeated harmonious interactions of the triad of entities, meaning them 3, Don, Carla, Jim, there may be seen to be a further harmonious interaction besides the 3 entities' higher self. So the information of them, it's almost like the 3 higher self are working together and merging their information, you know, sharing. It's like electricity, you know, firing through and not so separate, because they're working together so much that it's flashing all together. And that's why you find such affinity with some people sometimes, because your higher selves are connected. That doesn't mean that your higher selves are separate, but they have a more harmonious firing of this electricity, let's call it, you know. So I'm trying to just visualize, you know, something that can kind of represent how I perceive all of this, but I hope it makes sense, coming all from source. And this is why at the end I'll bring it back to the ocean. So yeah, what else did I say? That is, each social memory complex has an oversoul. Now they're going to the social memory complex, meaning that, of course, you know, when we are in 6th density positive, we belong to a social memory complex. So each social memory complex has an oversoul of a type which is difficult to describe to you in words, because a social memory complex, the way you see it, is a complex of entities that have come united into one. We could become the same thing here on planet Earth. Gaia, the spirit of Gaia, say, that is our social memory complex. Our future social memory complex is the Gaian mind. This is why my channel is called Gaia Awakens. We awaken into the reality that we are one here on planet Earth. So that oversoul, called Gaia in this case, is a type that I believe that's what they're describing, or trying to describe in words, that is difficult. Because now we have a planetary mind. And that is also, working with our... If we evolve, planet Earth evolves into 6th density, or the Gaian mind evolves into 6th density, then each one of us, as we incarnate again to come help, we can take from the Gaian mind, from our own separate higher self, which comes from another planetary, and it becomes very fussy at this point. But you can see the interactions of all these lines of connections between the illusory aspect of self here, all the way up to higher self, and the merging of all the minds, the collective mind and the cosmic mind itself. So they say, in this group, there are 2 such social memory complex totalities blending their efforts with your higher selves at this time, meaning that they, let's say maybe Don and Carla were of the same social memory complex and Jim wasn't, or maybe Jim and Carla, or maybe Jim and Don, I don't know, we can speculate, but I don't want to do that. So yeah, they had 2 social memory complex merging. So I don't know, Ra and say Latui, from 5th density and 6th density, they were merging their social memory complex to also help. So it's all, it's coming back to oneness. It's all one, and as we scale down, then there are different aspects of it, and that's it. That's what the densities are there for. So we can go to the final questions, where Don says, rightly so, Don, rightly so. It is very difficult at times for us to even get a small percentage of understanding from some of these concepts because of our limitation of awareness here. I think some meditation on the communication today will help us in formulating questions about these concepts. And I urge every one of you to also meditate on this after you're done with the video. Tonight, today, whenever it is, just do it. Really. Ra says, may we ask for any brief queries before we leave this instrument? And Don asks one more question. 3624, to finish this video and session 36, says, I'll just ask one little short one that you may not be able to answer before the final. The short one is, can you tell me what percentage of the wanderers on Earth have been successful in penetrating the memory block and becoming aware who they are? And then finally, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact? Ra says, we can approximate the percentage of those penetrating intelligently their status. This is between 8 and 1/2 and 9 3/4%. Okay, that's terrible. Let me reread it. This is between 8 and 1/2, so 8.5, and 9 3/4, so basically almost 10%. There is a larger percentile group of those who have a fairly well-defined, shall we say, symptomology indicating to them that they are not of this, shall we say, insanity. This amounts to a bit over 50% of the remainder. Nearly 1/3 of the remainder are aware that something about them is different. So, a couple of things before I get lost here, because so much that we can get out of here, and I'll merge it with the conclusions, is that Don is asking, if of all the wanderers are here, what percentage are aware of this, that this is not their true, origin, that they're aware that there's more, of them from higher densities. And so Ra, which I really, really love, and I was talking to my friend Lorena, who has a channel in Spanish, parallel to my parallel Spanish channel. She's awesome, so if you speak Spanish, you should really go check her out, because she explains the law of one in a brilliant way too. So in any case, we're talking about this, how we love percentages and all this, statistics from the law of one. I think that's what really attracts us. to the raw material. But in any case, so they're giving us percentages, which we're gonna cover again. But that's what they're talking about. So let's go to the last part of this raw answer, where they say, so you see, there are many gradations of awakening to the knowledge of being a wanderer. We may add that it is to the middle and first of these groups that this information will, shall we say, make sense. And then they say goodbye in their formal way, as they usually do, which I never include here, but I'm glad to include it whenever possible when they ask these questions and they have answers like this. And Ra says, this instrument is well. The resting place is somewhat deleterious, meaning, not conducive to comfort, or not injury, but a little negative. In any case, not negative in that sense. Anyhow, complicating things more than I should. In its effect upon the comfort of the dorsal side of this instrument's physical vehicle. We have mentioned this before. You are conscientious. We leave you now, my friends. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing merrily in the power and the peace of the one creator, Adonai. So, first of all, you can see, which I never include, Don always asks at the end of every single session if there's anything they can do to make the instrument, Carla, more comfortable. Ra always gives a little bit of information, which again I never include because there's not much to take out regarding the Law of One. But this is how they usually say goodbye, and I love it. It's always awesome to read it. And that's it. Now, going back to the question itself of the percentages. The first thing I'm going to say is that these percentages are no longer valid right now. Why? Because even though, aside from the fact that wanderers have come increasingly more, I think they said 65 million in 1981. It's been 40 years plus a couple of months that the rock contact was settled. There has been a huge amount of wanderers, and this is just my heart. Everybody says. I mean, Dolores Cannon says it too, and we just intuitively know that as we polarize, we already passed 2012, which was a great threshold. So we know that there is a lot more wanderers. But even then, the percentiles change, to my opinion. Knowing that we're going through the thinning of the veil also must change this. The fact that you're watching this, the fact that I am speaking about this is, it's to me, those percentages are not fixed. Those percentages were based in 1981. So I'll read them really quick so it makes sense to you. And what I'm going to extrapolate out of this for the conclusion is something that hopefully makes sense to you, and it can be useful. So again, even Ross said that back then, we can approximate the percentage of those penetrating intelligently their status, and they gave 10% of them know they are wanderers. Okay, this is 1981. So out of the 65 million, what is that? 650,000 people, wanderers, knew there were wanderers. Of the population back then was around 4.5 billion, 1981 again. So, only 650,000 people were aware that they were wanderers. So they say the other, around 10%, it's like 8.5 and 9 3/4, let's just say 10%. I love how they say that we can approximate things, but it's 8.5 and 9 3/4%. Oh, they're beautiful. They're just perfect. I love them. So, okay, so the other, there's a larger percentile, which is around 50%, a bit over 50%. So now we have 10% of the 65 or 650,000. Now we have around 50%. That would be around 32.5 million. I mean, you do the math. We're close to 33 million. Wanderers already knowing, that something is, that there are wanderers, and the other 50%, they kind of know that there's something weird about them, there's something different, and that they don't belong to this insanity, shall we say. And nearly 1/3 of the remainder, actually the percentage of the 50%, just to be very anal about this, it's about the remainder. So if you subtract 650,000 out of 65 million, then you get 64 million 350, am I right? So 50% of that is the remainder. Well, that's the remainder, it's 50% of that. Complicating things more than it should, but it's roughly about the same. 33, in that case, 33 million people knew. And then 1/3 of the remainder, in this case, a third of the remainder being 30 something million, so 10 million or so, they notice that something is different. So in 1981, around 40 something million people that were wanderers knew that something, they either knew exactly they were wanderers, or they knew, something was very different and that they didn't belong here, or they just were kind of like, something's different, here. Something smells funny. So, all right. So all of that just to cover it for no reason, I guess. There's always a reason. I don't know. You figure it out. You figure out what the reason why I cover that. But the real important part is that, how do you feel now? Do you feel that you are in the 10%, the one that you know that you're a wanderer? Do you feel that you're in the 50% where you know that, I don't belong to this insanity, but, I'm not sure what I am? Or do you feel like, it smells funny? I don't think you are part of that. I think you're either part of the... and it's funny because they do say that... Do they say it here? Maybe we may add... This is the beautiful part. We may add... This is raw. We may add that it is to the middle and first of these groups that this information, which will make sense. This information, meaning the law of one, the raw material. So to the middle and the first of these groups. So not to the ones the 1/3 of the remainder, which was around 11 million or 10 something million and change. This information makes sense to those who essentially know that there's something, funny about the world around them and about themselves, that they don't belong here, they don't belong to this insanity, using Ra's words, or that they know there are wanderers, of course. So if you are watching this, guess what? You are a wanderer, because otherwise you wouldn't be making sense of this. You would be saying like, what is this guy talking about? Which is possibly the vast majority of people. If you play this video to somebody, in very close, friends, or unless you're blessed, with all penetrated, forgetting veil, wanderers around you, I'm sure that you can find people around you that you play this and they say like, that guy's insane. Where's the asylum? So yeah, you should feel proud about yourself, in the sense that you have penetrated that veil already, and there you're there. You're all you're doing is connecting the dots that you already knew were there. So I'm glad to be part of that. If if you feel that way, and I'm glad that you are part of this, because we need that, and this is all part of the awakening process that we're going through. Which again, I feel that as everything, it gets prostituted in the way, the awakening, gets prostituted, and we think, a lot of people think that they're going through, an awakening process of this and that kind, which is fine. Everybody's going through their process. That's okay. But this awakening process of the wanderer is really, and I want to take out, any sort of pride out of that, because the awakening of the wanderer is just, to become harmonious with itself, and just to say, hooray, I'm awake. That's it. It's nothing, there's no extra privilege other than, the privilege of knowing yourself and knowing that you are one with the Creator. So, those who are not there yet, then that's fine. Their time will come, and we will just be waiting for them to say, hooray, you made it too. You are God. So, yeah. All right. So, conclusions, talking about this penetrating of the veil and higher self and everything else. We talk about how you communicate with the higher self, opening these roots of the mind that go all the way to the Creator, and by default through the higher self, you are aware now that the higher self is information that is already within you. All you need to do is use your will, your intentions, and draw from it. It's not like you're going to be enlightened by just meditating on this. What you're calling upon is catalyst through experiences. Accept those experiences and those catalysts. The higher self communicates mainly by experiences or catalysts in the experiences. So again, this is not to say that, I communicate with my higher self and I'm so spiritual because everything I do, it's very spiritual and higher self, and look at me, I have crystals all around me, the whole thing. Making fun of the exaggeration of the spiritual being, but the egotistical spiritual being. No, the path is to know yourself and to look at every experience and see, what are the lessons. That doesn't mean that you have to force yourself to love the experience. No, the experience is there to teach you a lesson. We go through all kind of emotions. That's fine. It's allowing yourself to be. So, without getting into the details of how to, process life, the idea is to always be in acceptance, because your higher self, now that you're allowing the will of your mind, like I explained earlier, the will of your mind directed, one-pointed, single-pointed into the higher self, and you allow those experiences to bring you the lessons and the catalyst necessary for your growth, then just accept them and say, I am one with the Creator, I am one with this situation. How can I see? You can always communicate with your higher self more and say, I don't see the lesson here, help me see this lesson. And you will continue to see synchronicities and events in your life and people talking to you and so on. You, as long as you're focused into the lessons that you need to be, sometimes it can be very simple. Just relax, stop being so stressed. Go out, breathe, and rejoice, like Ra said. Rejoice merrily in the power and the peace of the one Creator. So just be in tune with that, and as much as possible. I don't know. I can't give you any shortcuts to that. There are no shortcuts there. Just have that will focus towards the higher self, and you will reap the benefits. I mean, if a guy like me can do it, trust me, everybody can do it. I am very obtuse in learning all these things, and it works for me. I just surrender to it. So that's it. We finish session 36, and exactly at the hour in my screen, hour and 11 minutes and 11 seconds. I should probably take a screenshot of that. I love it. We have come to the end of session 36, part 2, and what we have is session 37 next time, which is going to be short. It's going to be very different, and I have something special for it, because it has to do with the raw contact. You can go ahead and read it and see exactly what I'm talking about. It's not in the original books, mostly, or vast majority. It's in book 5, as you will see. But in any case, that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in session 37. After recording the Spanish video, I realized that I made a huge mistake in my math here when we were talking about the percentages. So I kind of figured it now with a cold head, and I believe I got the percentages right. So if we were talking about 1981, 65 million wanderers, if I remember correctly too, that Ross said that was the amount of wanderers that we had. Then they said that approximately, once again, it's 10% of those who are awake. Let's call them fully awake. That would be 6,500,000, not 650,000. That would be 1%. Then that would leave a remainder of 58,500,000, of which 50%, which is 29,250,000, would be the mediumly awake. And then if we combine those 6,500,000 with the 29,250,000, we would take out that 30% of the remainder of all the total wanderers would be 10,750,000. That would mean that around 45,500,000 wanderers were in the process of awakening, fully awake to maybe something is wrong with me and society and me fitting in all this stuff. So that would remain, I believe, 19,500,000 that were asleep. Again, these numbers mean absolutely nothing today, but they mean everything to me right now because I wanted to get the numbers right. So if you do the math and you get something different, please leave them in the comments because I love tinkering with this stuff. All right, now it's time to go. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.